just want to introduce myself. My name is Colleen Coleman, and I am a government teacher here at the high school. So my job will be in the teacher role. Oh, thank you. We'll go over the format, but my job will be as in the teacher role here for our town hall today. But before we get started, we have a special performance from some Burnsville High School students. So they're going to come on stage and introduce themselves and tell you about a special song they're going to sing for you. So welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for making the trek in this lovely, true Minnesotan weather we're having today. I'm Andrew.
I'm Joy.
I'm Emma.
I'm Abby.
So this past fall in our U.S. government class, we had this project where we were supposed to create a performance piece based on something from U.S. history, sort of like what Lin-Manuel Miranda did with Hamilton. So we created our own song based off of the Boston Tea Party, and we also had the privilege of entering it in this contest where we got to perform it at the Orpheum Theater during Hamilton. So and we also heard that Congresswoman Craig is a huge Hamilton fan, so we hope she enjoys this performance.
We gathered in the town to discuss how to bridge down. Oh, don't you forget the British overtaxes so that they can pay their debts. Oh, don't you forget the fight between the British and our people ain't done yet. Don't tax our tea, don't you tax our tea. Don't you dare tax our tea. Oh, soon you'll see how we fight for liberty. Send your ships back to sea. You took my liberty. We dressed up to disguise our identities. Oh, so we tossed the tea. Tossed the East Indies in the sea. Oh, and don't you forget the British overtax us so that they can pay their debt. Oh, don't you forget the fight between the British and our people ain't done yet. Don't tax our tea, don't you tax our tea, don't you dare tax our tea. Oh, soon you'll see how we fight for liberty. Send your ships back to sea.
They were selected from over 3,000 students to perform on stage, so that's a great way to get started. Well, we will keep the introductions brief, so we have a lot of time for questions. I'm going to go over the ground rules in just a second, but we'd like to first introduce Congresswoman Angie Craig and thank her for joining us today. Okay. And I'm just going to go over a few rules so people will know how this will run and we can get to as many questions as possible. So we are going with, first of all, just to set the stage, we want to say that there are families here. There are lots of variety of ages, so we want to keep this respectful. Another thing we're asking is that you keep your question to 1 minute. So if you'll see, there are 2 microphones set up. Oh, yeah, they're kind of behind the columns. Yeah, so there's 1 microphone there and 1 microphone there. If you would like to ask a question, just please line up at the microphone. We'll go back and forth. And then what we're asking is that you keep your question to 1 minute. We have some lovely student volunteers right here in the front row, and they're going to be the timekeepers. So they'll be signaling to me if it's been a minute. And if you have not asked a question yet, I'll just gently encourage you to get to the question so that as many people as possible have the opportunity to ask questions today. And then the other part of it, Congresswoman Craig will have 2 minutes to respond, and same thing, we will hold her to the 2 minutes just so that we can get to the ultimate goal of hearing from a lot of voices today. So thank you for coming. And yeah, we are so grateful to have this time with you. So thank you. You're going to do an introduction, then we'll get started.
I am. Thank you. And thank you so much to the Burnsville High School kids here this morning. Thank you again. One more round of applause. It's such an honor and a privilege, and I'm so humbled to be here standing 24 days after I was sworn into the United States Congress to have my first of what will be many, many open town halls that everybody in our community is invited to attend. The first thing that I want to say is I appreciate every single one of you for being here today. I was sworn in 12 days into the longest government shutdown in American history. And I just want to start by saying, are there any federal workers in this crowd, or family of federal workers, or friends of federal workers who have seen the hardships that they've been under over the last little bit? What I want to say is the only heroes that emerged from last week and the last 24 days, 35 days, are the federal workers who were asked to come to work every single day and work without pay. There are a couple things we want to do today. One, I committed to this district that I would be present, that I would listen, no matter whether or not it was something that, politically I agreed with. But the first thing I want to do this morning is just say that the purpose of a U.S. member's district office is to help everyone, every constituent. So the very first priority that we've set as we've established our district office is to have more staff in our district office than in D.C., because this district belongs to all of us. We are setting up a staff that's going to be very focused on making sure that we are there to help anyone who needs our help navigate the federal government. So whether that is an issue that a veteran might have in filling a prescription or getting disability benefits from the VA, whether or not it is someone with an issue with a visa or an immigration issue, whatever your issue in navigating the federal government is, that's what we are staffing up to do. So I would encourage you just to keep that in mind. I wanted, in that vein, to really ask my district staff, those who are present here today, to stand up if you're not already standing. And if you're in the back, just kind of make yourself seen. I want to introduce Jen Gage. She's my communications director. Nick Coe, Nick Wave, that's my district director. Nate Fowler's my community liaison. Morris Allen is a community liaison. Sam Ron is my district scheduler and staff assistant. Mike Siebenaller is my senior advisor for casework. Christina Diaz is my, thank you, she is another constituent advocate. Kaylee Governor is another constituent advocate. And I hope what having these folks here today demonstrates is that we're here first and foremost to help you. And so we look forward, if you have a question, over the course, we're going to have contact information for that district office available. We have decided to put our district office, and it's up and running, and the phones are working, and the internet's working, which is kind of stunning when you're dealing with the federal government that we got it up so fast. And that district office is your office. It's not my office. So as I said before, over the last 24 days, it's been a trying time. I was sent to Washington to try to look for common ground and work together on issues that we all care about. And 11 of the first votes that I took in the U.S. Congress have been 11 times voting on bipartisan basis. We've had people crossing the aisle to vote with us to open up the government. I'm going to save any of the policy discussion around this for Q&A. But what I want to say to you is that I believe it is wrong for any president of any party to shut down the government to achieve a policy objective. And to be fair, both political parties have been guilty of this. To be fair, I am part of a group of 85 freshmen who were sent to serve in the United States Congress, and I am proud to say that I am one of many of those who are going to head back to Washington this week and talk about and work with each other on making sure that this is the last shutdown over a policy objective ever in the history of this country. Now, there's been a little bit more behind the scenes in the background that's been happening, although perhaps they haven't been as public in the media. I have co-sponsored and we have introduced legislation called H.R. 1. H.R. 1 is Sweeping Campaign Finance and Government Corruption Bill. And the reason this is so critical is because I believe you sent me there to work across the aisle to lower the cost of health care in this country, to finally break the reins that the pharmaceutical industry has on special interest in Washington. I believe you sent me there to advocate for infrastructure in this nation, for investment, for our roads, our highways, our bridges, another lane on Highway 35 as you go to Lakeville. I believe you sent me there to get the work done for you, not to advocate for special interests in this country. H.R. 1 finally, post-Citizens United, requires that super PACs tell us, the American people, who are funding those ads. This is not a partisan issue. It's not. This has to stop on all sides in this country. H.R. 1 finally makes online disclosure the same as television disclosure. We deserve to know. We deserve to know what special interest is trying to influence our votes and our politics in this country. It also brings a little Minnesota common sense to Washington, because there's an element of this proposal that would allow for small dollar donations to be matched. Just like in Minnesota, we have the contribution refund program at the state level. I can tell you this, after being there 24 days, Minnesota could transport a little more common sense back to Washington, and the whole nation would be better off. I also want to tell you that I am so happy that I received the 2 committees that I requested over the last 3 weeks. I asked to be on the Agriculture Committee, the House Committee on Ag, under the leadership of Congressman Colin Peterson, who is the chair of the Ag Committee in the 116th Congress. We are going to be responsible for implementation of the Farm Bill. I'm very proud. Many of you know that I grew up the granddaughter of a farm foreman who lost his job in the 1980s during the farm crisis. And I can tell you throughout the last several months, as I've sat and I've listened to farmers in this congressional district, and I've looked in their eyes and I felt in their voice the pain they're going through because they're not getting price, they're not getting access to markets, and it is leading to serious issues in our farm economy. And so when I look in their eyes, I see my grandfather. He ended up repairing John Deere tractors the rest of his life, and I'm going to fight every single day for both our farm communities and also our ag economy across Minnesota. The other committee I'm on, which I'm extremely pleased about, is Transportation and Infrastructure. These 2 committees put me with an opportunity that we haven't had in a very long time, and that's to work on a bipartisan basis with every single community. In the last 3 weeks, we spent a whole lot of time in Washington, but we've also managed to talk to the St. Paul Park City Council, to Scott County commissioners. I've been able to meet with the new mayor of Hastings. I've been able to listen to federal workers who talk about the investments we need to make in our air traffic control systems. Listen, My job is to represent every community in my congressional district. My job is not to represent a party. And I promise and commit to you today that I'm going to be fighting for every single resource this district can get access to in a transportation and infrastructure bill. And this is one of the areas that I truly believe that we can work together and find some common ground on. And then the last thing I want to say before we turn it over to you, because this is your town hall, not mine, it isn't apparent now, but those of us who are freshmen to this Congress are not afraid to call out the dysfunction that we see in Washington. And while leadership on both sides of the aisle have been talking about the current controversy and shutdown, there is a group of us among the freshmen who have searched each other out from across the aisle. And we've said to one another, we are the next generation of leadership. Now, we each have to reapply for our jobs every 2 years, so we know that. But we are the next generation of leadership, and the only way this place changes is if we commit to changing it. So you don't see it on the news. It's not making a lot of headlines, but my job is to be a workhorse. My job is to look across the aisle and figure out, even if ideology separates us on many issues, where we can work together. Again, it's an honor and a privilege to represent this community, and my main goal this morning is to hear from you. I travel back. We're back in session on Monday. I want to know from you, a very diverse community in the 2nd Congressional District that is truly a purple district that represents all ideologies and has a large, large proportion of independents. I want to know what you want me to work on when I get back to work on Monday. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. And now what we'd like to do is turn it over to questions. So if you see the 2 microphones there, feel free to line up at either microphone. We'll just go back and forth. Ma'am, do you want to be our first? Do you want to be our first question? Go ahead.
I'd love to be the first question. So thank you, Angie, for being here to hear from us today. We're really proud of you in the 2nd Congressional District. My question is about broadband. I live 3 miles straight east of the Minnesota Zoo, and I'm considered a suburban citizen, and I don't have reliable internet. I pay for reliable internet, but I don't have it. And before Senator Franken left his seat, I know he had a team that was researching the possibility of the internet being transformed into a public utility. I would love to see that so that we have that in our rural economies. I call it the great equalizer. And I'm wondering if you would comment on that, and what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you so very much, and thank you for the question. You know, I too believe it's the great equalizer. It's the key to making sure that Greater Minnesota has access to start businesses, whether they be large or small. It's the key to making sure that remote health care becomes a reality, as having big hospitals and primary care physicians in less populated areas is available to us. And there are new technologies that are emerging every single day that I believe are going to make a huge difference in access to the internet and broadband. I think my work on the Ag Committee is very important to this discussion, as well as my work on transportation and infrastructure. It will be one of my highest priorities, and when I say that, I've got 3 or 4 when I think about infrastructure investments. It's highways, it's roads, it's bridges, making sure that this state has bridges that meet high safety standards. It's being able to transport goods, and we all know that, you know, our farmers and our ag workers, we have to have that kind of network. Infrastructure, part of that, and probably one of the top 5 things, is investing in high-speed internet in every community in this country. There are new technologies emerging every single day that I think are going to make that much more economical to the nation, but I can assure you that I am going to fight to make sure that broadband, that high-speed internet in all of this congressional district and around the country is a priority when we hopefully come to a bipartisan infrastructure investment bill in the 116th Congress.
Terry Jacobs, congratulations. I am Burnsville 56B, Precinct 8. And my question happens to come from a number of friends of mine that are up in the Boundary Waters. They live in Cook and Ely, and you get the idea. They want to know if you're willing to hook up with Betty Cullum to, shall we say, thwart the whole concept of copper-nickel mining up in the Boundary Waters. As some of us know, Glencore, who is the principal owner of Polymet, is highly corrupt and has a really, really worldwide poor record of environmental damage. And so my question to you this morning happens to come from them. I've got a billion other questions, but I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate the opportunity to answer the question. I look at every single project that gets put forward in this state on an individual selected basis. And the question I always ask is, if a project can meet the high, rigorous level of environmental standards for the state of Minnesota, we have some of the highest environmental standards in the country in this state, can it move forward? This project in particular has not yet been submitted with a full project plan. But Terry, what I can tell you is that my family and I have enjoyed the Boundary Waters. It is an absolute Minnesota gem. And I will be very, very focused on whether or not sulfide ore mining can occur without environmental damage. I will tell you that I am skeptical that we will be able to move forward with that project without putting the Boundary Waters at risk. And what I also know from an economic development perspective is there are over 4,000 people employed in the tourism industry near the Boundary Waters, and that we cannot move forward with a plan that would put the Boundary Waters at risk. You know, I also know that some of my colleagues have supported a federal land swap on this topic. I would like to get a lot more information on this before I would agree to even look at that. So I start out believing that if there's any reason that we do this, it cannot put the Boundary Waters and a Minnesota treasure at risk.
Hello, my name is Glenn Wallace, and I would like to see a federal property tax that would cover all the assets of the billionaires and people of net worth of, say, maybe $100 million approximately, or more, so that we could bring down those mountains of wealth that has been concentrated in the hands of a very few individuals of this country. And I mean, like, I like the proposal by your colleague of Ocasio-Cortez of the 70% marginal tax rate, but that's just on income. And that won't do anything to whittle down those giant mountains of wealth, and so we can redistribute that wealth to the rest of the people of this country. So that's why I'd like to see something similar to local property taxes, but it would not be limited to just real estate. It would cover all the assets of the billionaires and the near billionaires. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your question and your comments. I appreciate them. Look, I have a serious issue. Let's start with sort of 6 months ago when the nation passed a tax bill that benefited primarily large corporations and the top 5% in this country. Income inequality and access to opportunity are two things that we have to have a reckoning with in this country, because there are way too many people, working folks, who get up every day, they work a full-time job, and they're not able to make a living wage in this country. I do believe that we have positioned ourselves in this nation for a serious issue when the economy goes on its next downturn. For the first time in the nation's history, we have incredibly high debt and deficits, and at the same time, we have incredibly low unemployment. It is historic, and it is going to be really, really difficult for this country to navigate its way out of the next recession as a result. So, you know, I'm looking at a lot of proposals. Thank you for recommending that one. I don't believe that we should start by looking at, you know, any further changes from a progressive tax code perspective before we go back to the question of what about record high corporate profits, record country debt and deficits, and how are we going to best position America to be able to come out of a recession that, if you look at our history, is always imminent down the road. I know that businesses are growing and unemployment is very low right now, and that's fantastic. The problem Minnesota has, and I just got cut off. You know, when they told me they were going to put each of you on 1-minute time limits, I said, well, you got to put me on a time limit too, to be fair. But apparently I've turned into a politician and I'm going over my 2 minutes. But I agree with you that income inequality is a real issue in this country, and we do have to make sure that America is investing in Americans again.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. I've got a question. I think you're spot on with H.R. 1 as far as trying to rein in who's contributing to what. I have to say, I'm just suggesting that we go a little bit farther. You know, I can't go to a policeman and give him money and say, I want you to influence how you're going to enforce the law. And it goes on to our judicial system. I can't give money to judges. I'm just wondering if you would be willing to go a little bit farther and sponsor something that says it's illegal for me to give my representative, my senator, my president money so that they influence everything in this country. I think it's really corruption.
That's exactly what we're trying to get at with H.R. 1. And you know, I've often said that when it comes to money in politics, we have to start to make sure that we drive this down to working folks, people in our community being able to contribute to campaigns and support campaigns at the grassroots level. I was incredibly, incredibly humbled. And this is, you know, you hear these numbers from time to time, but the average contribution in 2018 to me was $33 per person over the course of the 2 years that I ran. And I think we have to continue to make sure that in every election cycle, that is the opportunity. The problem, I will tell you, and if you go back to the 2010 ruling in Citizens United, the problem is that since that ruling in corporate dollars, unlimited corporate money has flown into campaigns in the form of super PACs, and we don't know who's contributing. We have no idea what their agenda is. That level of non-transparency has actually meant there's more pressure on our elected officials to raise even more money, because if you can't get your message out, you can't tell voters what you're going to work for and what you're going to fight for them. So I would be willing, as long as it's a fair system, I'm not going to unilaterally disarm and stop raising money, because if I do, I can tell you the super PACs are going to be the ones that are spreading their message. But it is my intention, and I on H.R. 1, personally, I would go further than H.R. 1 on the topic of lobbying. There are so many members of Congress, former members of Congress, who are now serving as lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Many of you know that I support legislation that would make it illegal to lobby if you're a former member of Congress. And I've voluntarily committed to never lobby since you put me here to represent you, whether it's the law or not.
Representative Craig, I want to just say I want to echo the sentiment of the gentleman before from up north about the boundary waters, but I wanted to open it up a little bit more broadly, because during the Trump administration, there's been some real serious reversals in gutting the EPA. Your predecessor wanted to hand over the right to pollute the boundary waters to Antofagasta on a silver platter. And recently they've come out and they want to liberalize putting mercury back up the smokestacks. And we've made some progress on, cutting back on that and moving towards having some sense around global warming. I'm just wondering, is there happier times ahead?
Well, I'm happy. I don't know where everybody else is, but look, I'm happy to be here to be able to say that, I represent the Minnesota majority, which is the group of people who believe that we can address climate change and continue to grow the economy with renewable resources. The administration, the day after Thanksgiving, released a report that said we are not addressing climate change at the pace we need to overcome over the next few years the $155 billion a year cost of global warming and not addressing climate change. So what we're seeing in Minnesota is pretty clear. More droughts, more floods, more storms. We're seeing it on the coast with the rising sea levels. We're seeing it in California with the wildfires. If we just take the lens of economic growth, forget about the fact that, the planet is warming and more people are going to get sick and all that for a second, the economic cost of not acting on climate change, to me, is not acceptable. I'm heartened that in the rules package on my first day in Congress, we voted to establish a select committee on the climate crisis. That committee will come up with ideas on how we can address climate change. But the simple truth as well is this: China and India and industry are moving toward more renewable energy sources. Why is that? Because that's where the growth is going to be in the future. Minnesota jobs grew 17% last year in the renewable energy sector, and they're in decline in other sectors. So I, for one, want America to step forward and be part of the solution and part of the leadership in investing in renewable energy and addressing climate change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bjorn Johnson from Inver Grove Heights, and you already partially answered my question because I was also going to ask about climate change. As you said, the UN put out a report that says we have 12 years to seriously address this issue, or it could be a global catastrophe. And I feel we need to move very quickly on this. This is not something we can do incrementally. We need to take bold steps. So I'm wondering, will you be helping to develop plans such as the Green New Deal that would create many, many new jobs in renewable energy to try and reduce fossil fuel use by at least to 50% or more?
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and thank you for the follow-up. So, as you know, the Green New Deal is a concept of addressing climate change. The policy specifics from that have yet to emerge, and I'll certainly be looking at those. One of the things that policy solutions that I really like, and it's because it's a bipartisan policy solution, and it's also revenue neutral to the country. Everybody in this room knows if there's a policy idea that comes up, one of the first questions I'm going to ask is, how much does it cost and who's going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? And so there's something called carbon fee and dividend, which is a way of putting a fee on polluters. And if energy costs go up in the nation, that dividend is then returned to households so that people just having electricity in their house are not paying more. This is an area that has bipartisan support. There's an initial bill by Representative Ted Deutsch from Florida that has been introduced or will be introduced here quickly. And I think the honest truth is it's our best chance on a bipartisan basis of addressing climate change in this country. And so I'm going to be looking at every single proposal like that to assess how can we actually get something passed that makes a difference with respect to climate change.
Thank you for having this town hall, Ms. Craig. I'd like to thank you for, at the very beginning, where you acknowledged the plight of the federal employees. My husband is a federal law enforcement agent, and he went to work for a month for no pay. They have very, very stressful jobs. Criminals don't rest during a government shutdown. Right. They don't. And it falls on the family, too. It was a very stressful time. We had to take forbearance out on our mortgage because we weren't sure when we were going to get paid. Many people couldn't get gas in their cars, and that's why the TSA. Safety for people flying, the air traffic controllers. I don't think a lot of people realize how so many people who risk their lives every day for the safety of this country were impacted by this. So I would like to ask for you to advocate on our behalf that if there is ever a government shutdown, I hope there isn't, that at least the employees get paid. It really was a very, very difficult time for us. And when will we be paid? Since it's over, we'd like to know that too.
Well, thank you for your family's commitment and sacrifice on behalf of this country. I just want to say that. You know, I met with TSA workers, I met with air traffic controllers. All of us here know that one of the regional air traffic control centers in this country is based right here in this district in Farmington. And I was out there a few weeks ago and literally sat and listened to controllers as they directed the planes up in the sky. And the sad irony of the fight that the parties just had is that a fight over border security left us less safe. That's the sad irony of it. And so you have my personal commitment that I won't forget what just happened to federal workers, to the people who are protecting our skies, to the federal corrections officers who told me how stressful it is on them, to law enforcement. And you have my commitment to go back to Washington next week and work with all of my might to see how we can prevent this from never happening again. Thank you.
I am Paul Belo from Burnsville. I'm a long-time supporter. I want to congratulate you and thank you for making the decision to run again. I hold you out as an example in my household to the younger residents of perseverance, coming back from failure. It's hard to lose, especially by less than 1 percentage point. So it was a thrill to see you come back and run again. Thank you. I work in the medical device industry, and I know you have some history in the same industry. I was really disappointed last year to see the Congress repeal the medical device tax, the 2.3% tax that was put on the medical device industry as part of the Affordable Care Act. It's a rich industry. I know you have some insight into this. So looking a gift horse squarely in the mouth, I believe that they can afford this tax easily, especially after the repeal, especially after the corporate tax rate changes last year. Any chance at all that we can see this tax re-implemented? I know the lobby is very strong. I know you talked about the influence of lobbying before. They can afford it. They really can afford it, and they can make their contribution to affordable care in this country.
Thank you so much, and thank you for what you do in the medtech industry. I'm proud to have worked in medtech. We saved a lot of lives. I was able to run the St. Jude Medical Foundation for a number of years, and be able to support folks who couldn't have access to health care, and it was truly a great experience. So the state of play for the medtech tax is actually, it was suspended through 2020. So that's the vote they took. In 2020, the medtech device tax of 2.3% will go back into effect. I actually agree with you. If you look at the margins in the medtech industry, there's some room there. There's certainly some room there, and there's some room within the pharmaceutical sector. So I am not disagreeing with you on that. The problem that I had with the medtech tax, and just bear with me for a minute, I'm going to policy geek out here. It's a tax on revenue. I think it should have been a tax on profit. Because the problem with a tax on revenue is it punishes small startup companies, the kind of entrepreneurship we want to encourage in this country. But you and I are in agreement. I think every sector of medicine has to have a contribution to successfully transitioning the way we pay for health care. Now, I'm going to go one step further here because you opened me up on health care, and that's dangerous. And tell you, I worked for a company whose payments came almost exclusively from Medicare because it's pacemakers, implantable defibrillators, devices of the aged. I think we need to look at the way we pay for health care in this country. It cannot be a volume-based system where the more you do, the more care you provide instead of the outcomes you achieve is what you get paid for. And I can tell you, MedTech wouldn't want to hear that out loud. But I'm telling you, we have got to get to a point where we are not rewarding doctors or companies for more care, but the best care.
Oh, Congresswoman, congratulations and thank you for hosting this town hall meeting. You're already making change in this district. My name is Bob Mokas, and I'm from Burnsville. And I want to speak to you as a gun owner and also as a veteran. And last year, a record number of people in this country died at the hands of a gun. Those people's voices need to be heard. There was nearly 40,000. It's now considered by some groups to be the second leading cause of death in this country. It's worse for black children. I believe you supported H.R. 8, is that correct?
I'm an original co-sponsor for H.R. 8,
okay.
And I will tell everyone what that is in just a moment.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. But anyway, I know you're going to hear from a lot of extremist views on both sides. And I hope you can filter through this, because even in Heller versus D.C., Antonin Scalia said that none of these rights in the Constitution come without limitations. And I don't see anything there that's going to affect my right as a gun owner. And so I'm asking for your thoughts on not only the criminal background check bill, but also the red flag bills. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bob. And I know you have a personal reason, and I am so sorry for the loss of your sister. And I think you're right, Bob. There is, I am a woman who shoots a gun. My family is very comfortable with guns. My 4 boys, 2 of them hunt, and one of them shot trap in high school. I've been known to take my 20 gauge over under out and join the boys from time to time. But there is no reason that we can't have an honest conversation about common sense gun violence prevention in this country. Many of you know that I'm a person who wants to see the data. And the data that I have looked at tells me when a state has enacted laws for universal background checks, mass shootings in that state have gone down 53%. Domestic violence using firearms has gone down almost 50%. Completion of suicide has gone down almost 50%. And so H.R. 8 is a bill that was introduced or is about to be introduced, and I'm an original co-sponsor to support universal background checks in this country. There's another bill that we just saw that would allow the CDC to conduct research on gun violence in this country. And I want to be clear. I respect and agree with each of you who support the Second Amendment. Every single law-abiding American has a right to bear arms. I understand that. But that law also comes with the responsibility as Americans to do everything we can to make sure that we are reducing the incidence of gun violence in this country.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask you some questions. I am an immigrant who has escaped communism. I am terrified at the prospect of America becoming an oppressive regime. It seems that the two most toxic words these days are Donald Trump. He has been called autocratic, dictatorial, and many other demeaning names. Yet nothing he has done compares to the permitted destruction and oppression by our justice systems of individuals who dare to support him. SWAT teams of 29 FBI agents and over a dozen vehicles in the wee hours of the morning, arresting one helpless 66-year-old man for a crime of refusing to compromise his integrity, is not representative of a free America. Neither is a system causing financial ruin and imposing jail sentences without proof and guilt for some, yet overlooking ample evidence and giving a pass to others. Nor is a dishonest media and powerful elected officials condemning 15 and 16-year-old boys simply for wearing MAGA hats. These are ways communists oppress people and should not be allowed in America. The question we should all be asking is, will I be next? So please tell me, Representative Craig, what are you going to do to help protect all Americans from such horrific encroachments on our liberties? And may we be assured that you believe in equality under the law for all Americans? And what will you do to prevent America from becoming an oppressive regime?
Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your thoughts. My job, I believe, that I was sent to Washington to do is simply this. It's to support the president and this administration when there is a good idea that will be healthy and impact positively the people of the 2nd Congressional District. I will tell you, I'll give you an example. The rule that his administration recently announced on expanded year-round sales of E15 ethanol, I believe, is a positive development. It helps our farmers grow markets. It speaks to the idea that we need to reduce carbon emissions in this country, and I support that and have proactively said I support it. I believe also that I've been sent here to say no to things when they aren't best for this district, and that's what I'm going to be keeping in mind as I make policy decisions. Another example that I just want to say is, look, I believe that a free press and treating our journalists with respect and dignity for the job that they do is important. And it is harder and harder on all sides than it's ever been before to get to the objectivity that Americans deserve in our journalism, because the news media has expanded itself in the same way that the American public seems to be. But I can tell you this, there are a lot of good journalists who are working hard every single day. And I am biased because I spent 4 years as a newspaper reporter before I went to work in business. But they're there to try to get the job done and tell the American people the facts, what's really happening, so that we can use objectivity and take the emotion out of our decisions. Thank you for sharing your views.
But you didn't address the equality under the law for all Americans.
I do believe in equality under the law for all Americans.
Thank you.
Congratulations again, Angie. Connie Beisel from Vermillion, and as a union member and a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service. Thank you. I deliver mail here in Burnsville, and Bob, that was standing in front of me for the gun safety, I am his mailman. Woo! But anyways, with each new Congress, we have to reintroduce 3 new House resolutions that protect door-to-door delivery, protect 6-day delivery, and anti-privatization of the Postal Service. And we're hoping that you will sign on to these resolutions so that nobody makes a bill to privatize the post office, because the President administration wants to do that. And we also are trying to work out a way to stop the pre-funding of future retirees' health benefits, and we hope that you will sign on to these.
Well, let me just start by saying, Connie, thank you for being here. It was 4 degrees, and that was on my car gauge when I was driving here today. You are out there every single day delivering our mail, whether the weather says you should leave home or not. So thank you for what you're doing. It's some of the hardest working folks I have ever met are letter carriers. I absolutely will sign on to those resolutions. And as someone who spent 4 years of her private sector career managing human resources for a major company, I can tell you, you're the only institution in the country that is asked to pre-fund retirement health care benefits, which effectively makes it look like the Postal Service is not profitable. I know that's not true, and I will work every single day to do that, and also to fight for your right, continued right, to organize and collectively bargain. Thank you.
Ms. Craig, my name is Mary Venkus, and I'm from Shakopee, Minnesota. I apologize, I'm a little nervous. I'm not used to speaking in front of a large crowd, but I do need to read this. Representative Craig, you have made several very valid points with regard to clean campaigns and clean government. You have also touted transparency. Thank you for doing that. Recently, we've experienced the Covington students' controversy. Many on the left and on the right have jumped to harsh judgment without weighing all the facts, thus further spreading falsehoods, obliterating the truth, and propagating fake news. As a matter of fact, our own newly elected Elon Omar has made condemning statement about these boys, spreading lies even after the record has been corrected. Perhaps I missed it, but I have not heard anything from you, Representative Craig. So please tell us on which side of this issue do you officially stand?
Thank you for your question and for raising the issue. Look, I think we have to come back to a time in this country where we can have disagreements with respect. We have to have respectful disagreements. You may not agree with me on all of my policies. That's absolutely fine. I want to hear what you think. I think that's what we've got to do, is be respectful of one another. And if there's any instance in this country where we are not being respectful of one another, then I condemn it no matter what side it's coming from. But the real problem in this country today is that there are sides. There's one America. We all love this country equally. We all want our neighbors to be successful equally. When there's a tornado that hits Cannon Falls, when there's a tornado that hits our townships, no one asks, what side of the aisle are you on? We ask, how can I help you? How can I help you? We have to recognize in this country that we're still not all equal. There still are ways in which we have to reduce inequality in this nation. This country has never been perfect, but we've always, as a country, been marching toward a more perfect union. We have to remember that there are no sides. There's just one America, and we've got to find a way to work together again.
Thank you, Congresswoman Craig, for hosting this town hall. My name is Bill Kramer from Savage. Early on, you made a comment in your opening statement about a new lane on 35W through Lakeville. Nothing against improving traffic flow through Lakeville, but I'm usually an advocate for the underdog. And I want to know, what your priority would be for funding new roads versus repairing, improving our current infrastructure and maintaining it, and or public transportation.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great question. And, the truth is, in America today, we need a little bit of all of the above. When I'm talking about expanding 35, we've got pretty good, mass transit, rapid transit, north to south, for example, in Dakota County. But there's zero east to west. So I think rapid transit has got to be part of the solution. In fact, we put our district office in Burnsville. Some of you may know this area. It's called Heart of the City. Our office is in the Heart of the City 2 development. And one of the reasons we selected that particular site is because it is just across the street from the new Orange Line stop. So that is critical to me. Look, we've got Scott County, for example, where we need to make some major investments to getting across the river there. People are trying to get to work every day, but I think I don't think we can choose. I think it's got to be an all of the above. We have to prioritize each of these transit projects. And I want to stop there and say, I know that regional planning authorities here in the metro take care of things, but I represent all of this congressional district, and that includes Wabasha County, that includes Goodhue County, that includes half of Rice County, a little bit of southern Washington County. And where there are fewer people, there are needs for investment. And so as I am in Washington, I'm going to be looking both for those major infrastructure projects that will help us create additional economic growth, but how can we make sure that our towns and our townships have access to water infrastructure, to sewer infrastructure? How can we make sure that we're investing in all of Minnesota? Thank you.
Hi, Angie. Adam Nikolai from Eagan. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to be the third by my count asking about climate change, which hopefully goes to demonstrate to you how critical it is and how important it is to your constituents. That UN report demonstrates that it's nothing less than a global emergency. We have unprecedented ocean warming. We have coral reef death. We have superstorms. We have mass extinctions. My kids have expressed fear about the world they're going to inherit. My son doesn't like to watch nature documentaries anymore because it depresses him to think of how many of these animals are going to go extinct by the time he grows up. I recently read an interview with Bill Gates, who broke the causes of the problem into 3 equal parts, and 2 of them were CO2 emissions from traffic and industry, and the other one was methane emissions, predominantly from farming and cattle, which surprised me that literally comprised 1/3 of the problem. And I believe to address this problem, we need to come at it holistically. We can't just shunt it to a select committee and expect them to solve it. And I really appreciate your clear-headed focus on policy and cost. I think that's an important perspective to come at this from. So 2 things for you. My first question is, will you please affirm that you appreciate the severity and urgency of this problem? And second, the committees you are on seem uniquely positioned to help address these issues. What can you specifically do to address farm-based methane emissions and traffic-based CO2 emissions from those committees? I don't want to pile on. I am a liberal, but I don't believe just piling on regulations is the way to do it. But this concept of a Green New Deal where we can help people do what they need to do, we don't just tell them what they need to do, but we provide them the support so that they can do the things our entire community needs them to do, and the burden doesn't just fall on them. I think that's really important. And will you affirm that you will keep climate change in mind as you craft policy? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. I really appreciate the question. What I see from day one in Washington is that, yes, I affirm that climate change is a serious threat to the planet. It's a serious threat to national security in this country. It's a serious threat for population migration across the world. It is a serious, serious issue. One of the biggest things we did on day one was the select committee. And I know when you say, hey, there's a select committee, that's great. That select committee has got to put forward the best experts in the world and in the country and come back to us with recommendations on how we address climate change as quickly as possible. We know that we are not running fast enough. We also understand that it's not going to be one thing. You're absolutely right. It's going to be carbon emissions. That's part of it. It's going to be working with the agriculture community to respect the challenge they have to feed the world, and at the same time, the responsibility that they have to ensure that there is a slowdown in the impact of climate change in this country. So, Adam, I wish there was a magic bullet I could give you today that would address climate change. I think from a policy perspective, again, carbon fee and dividend is one of the best policy proposals that is revenue neutral to the country. We have to all, though, come to the conclusion that climate change is real. that humans are contributing to the acceleration of the climate, that it is going to be far more costly to ignore the issue than to address it. And if we can do those things, and I promise you, I will be asking those questions and looking for those answers.
Okay, and I'm sorry to interrupt. We probably have time for about 2 more questions.
There's a lot of pent-up demand in this district.
I know.
I also want to add, off the cuff here, that so Jason Lewis and I we sat down in Washington, D.C. together about 3 or 4 weeks ago as he was flying out and I was flying out together. And I did get a great piece of advice from Jason. He said, lay off the carbs because the freshman 15 is real. So I just want all of you to know that I am going carb-free, and you can give Jason credit for that. So it's all good. It's all good. Work it across the aisle.
Oh, this goes till noon.
First, I want to say thank you for having this town hall and giving everybody the opportunity to have their voices heard. I've born and raised in Minnesota, 33 years in Prior Lake, so I'm a local. One of my concerns is the cost of health care. I've read some articles that say 300%. It's increased by 300%, which is astronomical, which is ridiculous, which is unhealthy. One of my concerns is that government will never be able to really run healthcare well because of the bureaucracy. And healthcare right now, patient-doctor relationships are no longer about your health. They're about filling out all the information that the bureaucracy needs. Really good doctors are leaving their positions because they really can't be doctors. They have to be bureaucrats. So I think the best solution or something to look at would be healthcare would be much more affordable if you sent it back to the free market to drop the prices to an affordable place and allow each state.
Just a minute, guys.
Allow each state to take care of the people that can't afford health care.
Well, thank you. Thank you. What I can tell you is that you and I agree completely that the cost of health care in this country is out of hand. Something happened in this country in the 1980s. And our cost of health care in the United States versus the quality we're getting from it started to rise at a rate that's unprecedented in all of the developed world. I personally believe that, and I use pharma as a great example, the free market is not controlling itself right now.
Amen.
It's not. It's not. The cost of pharmaceutical drugs, if you are diabetic, if you need insulin, is out of control. We cannot trust individual marketplaces to control themselves. We have to introduce, I believe, and understand what you're suggesting, because my answer may not be fulfilling to anybody in this room. I don't think we can move to government-sponsored health care in a 2-year period of time. And to some of my colleagues on one side of the aisle, they would say, yeah, that's not bold enough. What I believe is that we can reduce the cost of health care for everyone if we open up Medicare for a buy-in, not subsidy, additional competition in the marketplace. There are not enough insurance choices in part of my congressional district. In fact, in some parts, we only have 1 or 2 choices at all. Open up Medicare for a buy-in. Let the big insurance companies compete with Medicare. Change the way we pay for health care in this country. Make it outcomes-based. Make it prevention-based. What we're doing today is we're paying for volume. The more services, the more a physician gets paid, the more implants, the more med tech company gets paid. It's got to be based on something different. And if you stand a system up that is already flawed, it is going to be very dangerous. You and I agree. This is a perfect example where you and I agree on health care. We just have different ideas of how to solve the problem, and I think that's a very healthy debate that we all have to have in this country. Do you have time for maybe 4 more questions instead of 2? Okay. Just making sure my kids and teachers aren't going to run off anywhere.
Thank you, Angie. I'm glad you're having the town hall meetings now once again. I am Jennifer Michelson. I live in Eagan, and I come at healthcare from a different perspective. It is outrageous that we have a system that has access to insurance but not access to healthcare. I want to see us have a system where it's not the best darn system for the top 10% who can afford it and pay for it. We need to figure out how to provide it to the middle class and those who don't have income now. We have high infant mortality rate. Our age of death is going down. We are not providing a good service to our country. We need to look at how we can have access to health care, take the immoral profits out of the insurance industry, and I do believe a form of single payer is the route to go. The time frame, I don't know, 2 years is unrealistic, but what can you do to help Minnesota get on the track with the Marty plan that would be a waiver?
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to add to the previous questioner that the thing I hear from physicians the most is the administrative burdensome. And really, it's the health insurers. It's having to apply for reimbursement for services that's taking up all of the cost and time from a physician perspective. Many of you have heard me say before that I grew up in a family that for a lot of my childhood, we didn't have access to health care. There is no one in this country who understands better. If you can't afford your health care, it is not available to you. That is the simple truth in this country. And so we have to figure out how we move toward health care for every American. I believe that we have to change the way we pay for health care in this country as just a critical step to be able to expand health care to everyone. We have to continue to drive the cost of health care down. And think about this for just 1 second. We don't. The government of the United States is prohibited by law of the U.S. Congress for negotiating for Medicare recipients on drug pricing. We are the largest payer in the country, yet the Congress has said you can't negotiate for drug pricing. For Part B, pharmaceutical delivered in a hospital setting, physicians make 6 to 7% for everything that they prescribe. Do you know what they prescribe? Brand name drugs. You know why? Because they're the most profitable. We have to stop allowing brand name drug companies to extend the life of their patents so that generic providers are locked out of the market. Why? Why can't we allow reimportation of drugs from Canada when FDA has approved the exact same drug and the same compound? I led healthcare for a Fortune 500 company, 18,000 employees. The cost of specialty drugs, of compound drugs. We have to be able to willing to stand up to the special interest drug companies in this country. And until we do that, we are not going to lower the cost of health care. We won't even start.
Congratulations, ma'am. Thanks for hosting this town hall. My name is Arun Sankaran. I am from Rosemount. We have been here for the last 7 years, and I came to this country in 2007. No money, nothing. Just my family, and this country has been very nice to me. I have been able to get my master's degree here and also get a good, decent paying job, and everything is good, except for the last 12 years, our legal status is in sort of limbo. Even though we pay our taxes, everything, the chances of me getting green card in the next 5 years or 10 years is less than a person coming from Iceland or some other country getting into this unborn person. They have a better chance of rather me getting here, even though I've been here for the last 12 years legally, and I have my family, everyone here. we don't know, like, when we go out of this country, whether we can even go and come back, whether we'll be safe or we'll be detained at the port of entry and sent back home. So having said that, means I know, like, we have to keep a safe border and everything has to be secure. But at the same time, people who are here for a long time and who have been paying the taxes and contributing to this country, I would suggest, like, provide them some legal pathway. And also for legal citizens, there is a huge green card backlog, and there is a per country issue where you are from country like India or China, your chances of getting a green card is very difficult. But for countries like Iceland or some other countries, it's tilted towards them. So there is a fix for it. We tried to pass it in the last Congress. It didn't happen. So I would request your attention in this matter. And I was also, like, satisfied when you said, like, you're going to help people who are affected by visas and all those things. It's like we are also humans. We have a life and we contribute. We don't do anything bad to the society. So I wish you could do something in this aspect. Thanks.
Well, I just first want to say thank you for stepping forward and sharing your story. Yours is truly the story of America, an America that's been built by immigrants over the last hundreds of years. So what I will say to you is you have my commitment to work toward comprehensive immigration reform in this country. You have my absolute commitment. And for those of you who are concerned about border security, particularly on the southern border, you have my commitment that border security is top of mind for me as well. See, it's a false choice if we say we can't reform immigration and protect our borders. We have to have this conversation in America about what kind of nation we want to be. I believe the 2013 Senate bill that got 67 senators to support on a bipartisan basis that allowed a path to citizenship for our nation's dreamers, that allowed, again, for you to earn a path to citizenship over time by being a good citizen, by paying your taxes, by contributing to America, is the path forward in this country. At the same time, the dialogue we've been having over the last few weeks during the government shutdown is perhaps instructive, because what we know is that, and I look to my colleague Will Hurd from Texas. He's got more miles on the southern border than any other member of Congress. And Will Hurd believes that border security, just like me, is comprised of a number of different elements. It's how do we build infrastructure and strengthen our ports of entry so that we can keep drugs out of this country. It's an important conversation. How do we keep these drugs out? Almost 90% of heroin, meth, they come through ports of entry, not through the traditional ways on the southern border. It's a good conversation to have about what are we going to do. Hey, the government was shut down for 3 weeks over this. I'm going to talk a little longer, so you're good. But thank you for doing your job well. That's good. That's good. I think we should be investing in advanced technology on our border. And yes, there may be places where we need additional barriers. But what I can tell you is undocumented folks, most 40% are overstaying their visas. They're not coming in on the southern border illegally. But if we don't have these two conversations in tandem, we're never going to solve the problem, because as long as we have a years-long backlog in having individuals like you who want to become American citizens, as long as we have that backlog with immigration judges, as long as we have 3,000 people that we need to hire for custom border agents, as long as we have all of these issues, we're going to have people who try to go around the system. So I think we have to have this conversation in tandem. I support strong border security. I support comprehensive immigration reform. And I'm going to stay optimistic because I believe this country is that good that we can do both of those things at the same time. And I look forward to fighting for that on your behalf. All right. I wasn't counting, but one more.
Representative Craig, thank you so much for holding this town hall. My name is Lisa Harrio. I live in Eagan. For the past 7 years, I volunteered with Prepare and Prosper doing tax returns for lower income individuals. This is supported partially by the VITA program through the IRS. And my time there, I've slowly seen the support the IRS gives us to being chipped away. This year, there is a publication the IRS gives us in print so we can look up tax information that the IRS was not able to print. So we have to look it up online this year. Luckily, I have other information, but still, that's a very sign of the times. So my question for you is, I understand the IRS is not everyone's favorite government entity. They do, however, perform a very important function in making sure our tax laws are applied fairly. So your chance of being audited isn't because of the amount of income you have. It's based on what red flags the IRS sees. And making sure to support a VITA program, which is important for people who don't have the money to pay a preparer to do their taxes for them. And the Earned Income Credit, which helps our working families. And the support in general, so they have the resources they need to do their job.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I don't know how to answer your question except to say I agree with you. It's always a little nonsensical when you have a partial government shutdown and you send the people who collect the revenue for the nation home because they aren't essential. So I do think if there's any silver lining, there are two things out of the last 24 days, plus 12 before I got sworn in. I think we've all come to realize at a deeper level the important work that federal employees provide for this nation. And again, these are the true heroes here. It's not the politicians in Washington, because we can do better. And I just want to end today, thank you for your question, by saying to all of us, including myself, we must do better. We must look for common ground in this country again. If we disagree, it must be based on policy. It must be based on solutions. You each have my commitment to show up every single month, get ready, every month, to be available to answer your questions in a public meeting. You have my commitment. Every single one of you to serve. I didn't
remember the farmers.
We just want to say in government class, we say that democracy only works when the citizens are engaged. So mostly we want to thank all of you for coming today, for being engaged. We want to thank the student volunteers, and then also Congresswoman Craig. Thank you so much to everyone who participated today.